Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We'll get you top stories from India and the region. I'm Tanvi Taneja. And for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in London, Ollie Barrett. Ollie, good to have you with us.
Tanvi, good to be with you. It's 11:30 a.m. here in London, 12:30 p.m. across Central Europe. Coming up in the next half an hour, an update on aid to Gaza, evacuating children from Belgorod, and a new AI chip from Nvidia. First, the headlines.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken lauds extraordinary expansion of defense ties with the Philippines. Foreign Minister Manalo thanks the US for recent support on recent incidents in the South China Sea. Qatar says it is cautiously optimistic about the Gaza ceasefire talks, adds that the next major objective of ceasefire negotiations is to send a counter-proposal to Hamas. Hong Kong Legislative Council unanimously passes new national security bill with all 89 votes in favour. And campaigning for India's parliamentary election gains momentum. Prime Minister Narendra Modi holds roadshow in South India. Opposition leaders discuss election manifesto. The Philippines foreign minister said on Tuesday that the challenge ahead was how to sustain and elevate relations between his country and long-term ally, the United States. Philippines Foreign Minister Enrique Manalo thanked visiting US Secretary of State Antony Blinken for United States support towards recent incidents in the South China Sea. Manalo added his country was committed to managing disputes in accordance with the rules-based order.
The challenge now is how to sustain and further elevate our alliance and partnership. Our discussion today focused on many issues. These include on defense and security engagement. We discussed ways to strengthen the alliance through better coordination at the policy and operational levels to ensure that it remains relevant and responsive to current, emerging, and cross-cutting challenges in the defense, security, and economic spheres, while staying true to our commitment to safeguarding and promoting peace, security, and prosperity of the region, always anchored on the rule of law.
Speaking at the same event, Blinken said China's actions in the South China Sea had triggered a wider international reaction, and US was engaged in intense diplomacy to reaffirm international law.
We have a shared concern about the PRC's actions that threaten our common vision for a free, open Indo-Pacific, including in the South China Sea and in the Philippines exclusive economic zone. Repeated violations of international law and the rights of the Philippines, water cannons, blocking maneuvers, close shadowing, other dangerous operations. These waterways are critical to the Philippines, to its security, to its economy, but they're also critical to the interests of the region, the United States, and the world.
To give us more on the engagements between the United States and the Philippines, DD India's Patrick Falk has more from Singapore.
This visit is about Washington reaffirming its commitment to its ally and their defense treaty. This is an incredibly important trip for that reason. The Secretary of State described that commitment as being ironclad in that joint press briefing with Enrique Manalo, particularly important at a time when there has been growing tension between Manila and Beijing over their territorial disputes in the South China Sea. Antony Blinken, as we heard also just a moment ago, said that these waterways were critical not just to the Philippines, its security and its its economy, but also to the region, the US and the world. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has said recently that he has been alarmed by Beijing's actions, and this was an important visit also because it comes at a time when there have been questions about just how far Washington would go to defend the Philippines in the event of any sort of armed attack. So this will have sent an important signal to Beijing that it will stand by and back its treaty ally, but at the same time it's difficult to see Beijing softening its stance or changing its position on its claim to nearly all of the South China Sea as well. There has been this sort of deepening cooperation between the Philippines and the US on many different fronts, and that is part of the reason why Beijing has been acting more assertively. Ironically, you could argue that this is precisely what is pushing the US closer towards Manila and deepening their military cooperation. But also, remember, part of this visit by Antony Blinken is also about paving the way for a trilateral summit to take place in April between Japan, the Philippines and the US. So these efforts are becoming more coordinated with US allies as well.
That was Patrick Falk reporting from Singapore. Meanwhile, China's foreign ministry in its response said that the United States had no right to interfere in maritime disputes between Manila and Beijing, and that China would take necessary actions to defend its territory. Ties between the Philippines and China have soared amid repeated spats over disputed features in the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, and Manila has accused China's Coast Guard of pursuing a policy of aggression. Moving on, India's foreign ministry on Tuesday said that China was making absurd claims over Arunachal Pradesh, adding that the northeastern state, which shares a border with China, will always be an integral and inalienable part of India. In response to media queries on comments made by the spokesperson of the Chinese Defence Ministry regarding Arunachal Pradesh, the official spokesperson of the Ministry of External Affairs of India, Randhir Jaiswal, said, and I quote him, "We've noted the comments made by the spokesperson of the Chinese Defence Ministry advancing absurd claims over the territory of the Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh. Repeating baseless arguments in this regard do not lend such claims any validity. Arunachal Pradesh was, is and will always be an integral and inalienable part of India. Its people will continue to benefit from our development programs and infrastructure projects." Unquote. On to West Asia now. Just as aid is reaching northern Gaza via the land and sea routes, mediated talks are underway between Israel and Hamas in Qatar to strike a ceasefire deal. Let's now go across to my colleague Ollie Barrett in London for more on the truce talks and other stories making headlines around the world. Ollie, over to you now.
Thank you, Tanvi. And yes, let's start with an update on the Israel-Hamas conflict and the prospect for a ceasefire. Qatar's foreign ministry spokesperson Majed Al-Ansari has, in his weekly briefing in Doha, said that Qatar is cautiously optimistic about Gaza ceasefire talks. And the next major objective of ceasefire negotiations will be to send a counter-proposal to Hamas.
First of all, I don't think we are at a moment now where we can say that we are close to a deal. We are, as I said, we are cautiously optimistic because the talks have resumed, and that is a good thing, and we hope that that continues, and we hope to build upon that in the coming days. But it's still too early to announce any successes. So we remain, as I said, we remain hopeful.
Israel will send a team to Washington, meanwhile, to discuss a potential military operation in Gaza's southern city of Rafah. That decision was conveyed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to US President Joe Biden in a call they had on Monday. The two leaders also focused on efforts to increase aid to Gaza.
We discussed the latest developments in the war, including Israel's commitment to achieving all of the war's goals, eliminating Hamas, freeing all of our hostages, and ensuring that Gaza will no longer pose a threat to Israel, while providing the necessary humanitarian aid that will assist in achieving these goals.
US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said that President Joe Biden told the Israeli Prime Minister that he needs a coherent strategy for Gaza.
The President told the Prime Minister again today that we share the goal of defeating Hamas, but we just believe you need a coherent and sustainable strategy to make that happen.
DD India's Sarah Coates has more from Tel Aviv.
This Hamas delegation that is on the ground in Qatar will need to relay back every little bit of information to the leader of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, Yahya Sinwar, who is believed to be sheltering, hiding underground. We do understand that this Israeli delegation last night met with these Qatari mediators, really the first day of their trip there. According to the Israelis, they'll be laying out a framework for a deal which would include a pause for around 6 weeks in fighting, the release of some 40 Israeli captives for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. But what we do need to remember here is that there are still large gaps between these two parties, big sticking points that do remain. One of these is Hamas wants to actually choose these Palestinian prisoners that are set free from Israeli jails, which is something that Israel says simply will not happen. While on the other hand, Israel wants a list of Israeli captives that do remain alive in the Gaza Strip, which is something that Hamas says it simply cannot provide, given this intense Israeli bombing campaign. Hamas saying that it doesn't know which captives are alive or dead. And then there, of course, is this main sticking point, this main stumbling block that we've been seeing time and time again. This is something that Hamas reportedly wants to discuss in the second or third stage of these talks. But this is something that Israel says is a red line, something that it simply will not agree to, as this would leave Hamas in power in the Gaza Strip.
Moving on from the crisis in Gaza, around 9,000 children will be evacuated from the Russian city of Belgorod and several other districts due to Ukrainian shelling. Regional Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov said that the first group of 1,200 children will be evacuated on the 22nd of March. At least 4 people were killed in Ukrainian shelling in Russia's Belgorod region bordering Ukraine on Monday. Attacks on Belgorod have escalated in recent months, with 25 people killed in a single incident in December. During the 20th meeting of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group at the US Ramstein Air Base in Germany, US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said that there would be a new military aid package worth $300 million to Ukraine to support its ongoing conflict with Russia.
Ukraine won't back down, and neither will the United States. So our message today is clear. The United States will not let Ukraine fail. This coalition will not let Ukraine fail, and the free world will not let Ukraine fail. Just last week, the United States announced additional security assistance for Ukraine valued at $300 million. This is an extraordinary measure to support Ukraine's most pressing needs for air defense, artillery, and anti-tank capabilities. We were only able to support this much needed package by identifying some unanticipated contract savings. But we remain determined to provide Ukraine with the resources that it needs.
It's reported the European Union is preparing to impose tariffs on grain imports from Russia and Belarus to appease farmers and some member states as well. The European Union is expected to impose a duty of $103.26 a tonne on grain coming from Russia and Belarus. That reported move comes as farmers demand changes to sanctions imposed on them by the bloc's Green Deal plan to tackle climate change and the reimposition of customs duties on imports of agricultural products from Ukraine. In the last hour, though, we've had word from a European Union Commission spokesperson saying that the EU is not in a position at the moment to communicate a date for any possible proposal. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has also called for an EU ban on imports of Russian and Belarusian agricultural products. Former US President Donald Trump's lawyers say he couldn't afford to post a bond covering the full amount for the $454 million civil fraud judgment against him. while appealing the New York ruling, calling it practically impossible after 30 surety companies turned him down. Donald Trump's lawyers say potential underwriters wanted cash, not property. They asked the appeals court to postpone posting the bond until his appeal concludes, saying the value of Donald Trump's properties exceeds the judgment. Artificial intelligence powerhouse NVIDIA has unveiled a flagship AI chip, which it says can do some tasks 30 times faster than its predecessor. The new chip combines two chips from NVIDIA's previous size into a single unit, and it has 208 billion transistors, therefore improving productivity. NVIDIA is the third most valuable company in the United States, behind Microsoft and Apple. And that's it from me for now. Tanvi in London, back to you in the studio.
Thank you very much, Ollie. Ollie Barrett joining us from London. You're watching DD India Global. Still to come on the show. India committed to combating piracy and terrorism in the Indian Ocean. And in a historic move, the Bank of Japan ends the world's only negative rates regime, raises interest rates for the first time since 2007.
Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India.
We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
We don't just present facts, we demystify complex social, political and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future, because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, D.C.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times. Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. Back to Asia. Some business news now. The Bank of Japan ended 8 years of negative interest rates and other remnants of its unorthodox policy on Tuesday. The Bank of Japan increased its key interest rate from minus 0.1% to a range between 0 and 0.1%. It comes as wages have jumped after consumer prices rose. While the move will be Japan's first interest rate hike in 17 years, it still keeps rates stuck around the range of 0. This is due to a fragile economic recovery there that forces the central bank to go slow in any further rise in borrowing costs. In a widely expected decision, the Bank of Japan ditched a policy put in place since 2016 that applied a 0.1% charge on some excess reserves the financial institutions had parked with the central bank. China's Evergrande Group founder Hui Ka-yan will be barred from the securities market for life and was fined $6.53 million after the regulator accused the group's flagship unit of inflating results, securities fraud and failing to make timely disclosures. China's securities watchdog also penalized Evergrande's Hengda Real Estate and several of its former senior executives after an investigation. Evergrande defaulted on its offshore debt in late 2021 and was ordered by the Hong Kong High Court to liquidate in January. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said that China is ready to work with New Zealand to actively implement the upgraded version of the China-New Zealand Free Trade Agreement. On Monday, Wang Yi met New Zealand's Trade Minister Todd McClay in Wellington, where he said that the two sides should launch negotiations on the negative list of services trade as soon as possible to push bilateral cooperation to a new level. The upgraded China-New Zealand FTA marks an important example in the face of increasing trade barriers and uncertainties in the world. Yi said that the two sides should work together to uphold the principle of free trade and resist various protectionism and unilateral actions. Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, on Tuesday said that India is committed to protecting freedom of navigation and combating piracy and terrorism in the Indian Ocean region after Bulgarian President Rumen Radev thanked him for the Indian Navy rescuing his country's ship and crew. In a tweet, he said, and I quote, "Appreciate your message, President of Bulgaria. We are happy that 7 Bulgarian nationals are safe and will be returning home soon. India is committed to protecting freedom of navigation and combating piracy and terrorism in the Indian Ocean region." Earlier, Bulgarian President Rumen Radev thanked the Indian Prime Minister for the rescue operation, saying, "My sincere gratitude to Prime Minister Narendra Modi for the brave action of their navy rescuing the hijacked Bulgarian ship Ruan and its crew, including 7 Bulgarian citizens." The Indian Navy on Sunday released a video showing rescue operation carried out on Saturday. During the operation, the Indian Naval Forces, including special commandos, seized a cargo vessel, rescuing 17 crew members, while all the 35 pirates surrendered. The Navy spokesperson said that maritime operations by India reflect the commitment towards reinforcing peace and stability in the region. And now we get you the latest on what's happening in India in the run-up to the world's largest democratic general elections. Campaigning is gaining momentum for the forthcoming parliamentary elections in India. Leaders of various political parties have started holding rallies and public meetings to woo the voters. Prime Minister and senior BJP leader Narendra Modi held a massive roadshow in the southern state of Kerala on Tuesday. The Prime Minister received a rousing welcome in Palakkad city in the southern state of Kerala. India's Prime Minister later in the day also visited the southern state of Tamil Nadu. The Prime Minister held a massive public rally in Salem. He received a warm welcome at the premises where thousands lined up to catch a glimpse of the Prime Minister. Further, the Prime Minister also addressed the gathering on the occasion. In a statement, he stressed that in the Hindu religion, Shakti means the mother power and women power. He accused opposition's Indie alliance of Congress and the DMK of destroying and disregarding Shakti.
तमिलनाडु में शक्ति कांची कामाक्षी है, यहाँ शक्ति मदुरई मीनाक्षी है, यहाँ कन्याकुमारी शक्तिपीठ है, यहाँ की शक्ति समयपुरम मारियम्मन है। हिंदू धर्म में शक्ति का मतलब होता है मातृशक्ति, नारी शक्ति। कांग्रेस और डीएमके का इंडी अलायंस कह रहा है कि वो इसका विनाश करेंगे।
The Congress Working Committee met on Tuesday and deliberated thoroughly on the party's manifesto for the upcoming elections. In his address to the Congress Working Committee meeting, Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge said Congress workers in every village and town will have to rise to take their manifesto to every household. Former party chiefs Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi also attended the meeting.
हमारे कांग्रेस अध्यक्ष और राहुल जी ने पिछले 63 दिनों में 5 न्याय को लेकर 25 गारंटियों की घोषणा की है और आज इन गारंटियों के ऊपर और इससे आगे भी और अलग विषयों में हमारी आर्थिक नीति के लिए क्या न्याय का एजेंडा होना चाहिए, हमारे विदेश नीति के लिए क्या न्याय का एजेंडा होना चाहिए, हमारे संविधान के संरक्षण के लिए न्याय का एजेंडा क्या होना चाहिए, पर्यावरण को लेकर क्या न्याय एजेंडा होना चाहिए, इस पर बातचीत हुई।
All right, let's give you some more news coming from Asia. Hong Kong's Legislative Council has unanimously passed the new national security law with all 89 votes in favor of the law. Hong Kong leaders termed it a historic moment and said that the bill safeguards national security. The new law, which is set to be applicable from March 23rd, aims to update or create new laws and penalties to prevent treason, sabotage, sedition with up to life imprisonment. DD India's Laura Westbrook sent us this report from Hong Kong.
Hong Kong's leader John Lee addressed the Legislative Council, Hong Kong's mini parliament, and he called it an historic day. He said that he felt proud that Hong Kong had finally fulfilled its constitutional duty in enacting its own national security legislation. The government says that this will sit alongside the 2020 Beijing-imposed national security law. That came about after months of anti-government protests in 2019. Now, what's taken people by surprise is the speed at which this law has been passed. It was published by the government on March 8th, and lawmakers went through 181 clauses in just 6 days and held special meetings to really get this bill passed. And on Tuesday, it was passed unanimously by all lawmakers in Hong Kong's LegCo. Many lawmakers said that it was necessary to pass this bill in light of the 2019 anti-government demonstrations. This law does propose some new offences, and it also includes some quite hefty jail terms, including life imprisonment for treason. The government tried to pass this law back in 2003. Back then, there was significant public opposition to it. 500,000 people took to the streets, and it was shelved up until now. Today, there haven't been any protests, although there was police presence outside the Legislative Council. Although some legal experts and lawyers have expressed concerns that the law could be vague and broad in some offences, and then it could have a chilling effect. The government, though, says it's necessary. Laura Westbrook in Hong Kong, reporting for DD India.
And next we take a look at other stories making news around the world. Many hospitals in China have stopped offering newborn delivery services this year as China faces a declining demand amid a record drop in new births. Many women in China are opting to remain childless, leading to the downturn in maternity hospitals and its obstetric departments. United Arab Emirates residents and visitors marked the Islamic holy month of Ramadan with twinkling lights and crescent-shaped decorations. People gathered under the shadow of the iconic Burj Khalifa Tower to watch the traditional cannon firing ceremony, which marks the end of the day's fast. And as we wind up this edition of DD India Global, we leave you with some heartwarming visuals from the world of tennis as top players traded in their rackets for puppy playtime at a center in Miami's Gardens to promote pet adoption. Take a look.
Just here at the humane rescues, when they get brought in, just some doggies. I think we might be adopted.
Too soon.
Don't they make our lives jovial, pets? That's all in this edition of DD India Global. Do join us for another edition of the show at 7:30 p.m. IST. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram at DD India Live. You can also find us online at ddindia.co.in. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja. From all of us here in New Delhi, thank you for watching. Namaskar.